Oh man, today's inflation report was absolutely incredible. Let's drink to that one and go through exactly what was in it, what's going on with Israel and Gaza, what's going on, the new information regarding the California wildfires. As a surprise, it's just even more of an eye roller. And what happened with quantum computing stocks? All of a sudden, quantum's back because of what Microsoft said. Is it Fugazi? Is it Fugazi? Should you be paying attention to it? Well, let's cover that and more on today's Meet Kevin Report. News that makes you money. Nothing like cold coffee. Okay, look, hey, I just want to give a quick heads up, and I have a question for you as well. I'm sorry things are discombobulated. The set's not done yet. The 4K setup is, quite frankly, it's just been a nightmare, and I apologize. I'm sleeping very little, just trying to grind through, get it done, and it's been very, very difficult. But I think the finish line is in sight, so stay tuned. However, this morning's CPI report kind of got me excited and thinking like, man, nobody wants to report the morning news more than me. But I also like doing the evening news because then we can kind of go through, earnings and what happened in politics in the day and all that. So then I'm like, should we do both? I don't know. Leave a comment down below. Should we have a Meet Kevin report that targets, let's call it, 5 o'clock p.m., right? California time, which would be 8 Eastern. And then maybe a morning version that comes out at, let's say, 6 a.m., right before the market opens. And so that way you kind of have both. So an AM and a PM version. I don't know. If you're into AM and PM, there's a store. You could go there. Or if you want this AM and PM, leave a comment. All right, anyway, so apologize, okay? Things are a mess, so I'm not even changed yet. It's just bad. But anyway, the CPI report this morning was absolutely phenomenal. And here's the thing. Everybody was freaking out again about inflation over the last week, especially because we had this ISM report that came out. People were reading the headline of the ISM report on January 7th, and they're like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. Inflation is coming back. Oh boy. And then I'm like, what? I made a video on this. Y'all probably, hopefully saw it. And I talked to course members about this. I'm like, the report does not say that inflation is coming back. The report, when you actually read the details of the report, we're simply saying that slightly more businesses were reporting higher prices. 23, just less than a quarter, right? 23.7 businesses were reporting higher prices. That was compared to 21%. So if they called 100 businesses, 2 more reported higher prices. But that skewed the ISM numbers and the headline and made everybody think that inflation was resurging. But the reality was a below average total set of businesses, 73.4% of them, were reporting stable prices. So really, the ISM report, when you actually read it, it was not saying there was inflation again. But the same has been true of these CPI inflation reports. Most of the inflation, the new inflation, I'm not saying, yes, look, I realize prices are higher, right? But the new inflation that's driving prices even higher, most of that new information that's driving prices higher is based in limited categories, specifically auto repairs, auto insurance, and medical expenses, medical and healthcare insurance, right? These are very, very common. We're still seeing the decline of housing inflation, although it's still in there, 0.3%. LA might prop that up a little bit, though, nationwide, we should still be on the downtrend because of the crazy rent increases that are going on in Los Angeles, so we'll have to pay attention to those. But anyway, the report this morning was so good that we basically spawned a new risk-on rally. I mean, Tesla was up 8%, Palantir 3%, NVIDIA 3.4%, Symbiotics 6.5%, the Qs were up 2.26%, the SPY was up 1.8%, the Dow Jones was up 1.6%, the 10-year, which peaked yesterday on a good PPI report. You had a good inflation report yesterday, and the 10-year peak, it was this is stupid. In fact, when I made my video yesterday, I'm like, this is topsy-turvy. This is not sustainable. Is everybody just waiting for CPI to get back to the party? Because this is good news. You have good jobs data, good PPI data, and CPI data should be good. And when you combine the two, you'll have good PCE. Well, sure enough, today, CPI comes in a match on a headline, but the core elements came in lower than expected. The headline number beat because energy and gas was up, at the largest level. It made up 40% of the inflation figure, largest level of last year. Colder winter, Russia, pipelines, we don't need to go into all that. We've covered that already. But anyway, the year-over-year core number came in lower. This is the first time we've seen a drop since July, and these underlying figures on average were pretty good. When we went through it with course members, we're like, wow, there are actually a lot of negative reads in here, which is fantastic to some extent. You know, if you have too much deflation, that's a bad thing. Then you turn into China, and you know, then you want to buy TLT at that point, because then all of a sudden bond yields are collapsing, right? Because everybody's worried about deflation. I actually am more worried about deflation in America than I am worried about inflation. That's not saying I definitely think we're going to have a lot of deflation, but I definitely don't think we're going to have a lot of new inflation, with the exception, again, of Los Angeles. We'll talk about that in a moment. But this is my opinion. You know, everybody can have a different opinion on this. So that's why I've been so frustrated in the Fed, in my opinion, making this giant mistake by allowing yields to be as high as they are. Because in an environment where we're actually seeing inflation potentially undershoot rather than overshoot, you're over tightening, and you're just going to end up causing problems. It's not good, and we'll see what happens. Q1, Q2, Q3, January, February, March, we'll see layoffs and continued inflation progress. Inflation progress should be good. The Fed already planted the seed that the next 3 months of inflation should actually be lower on a year-over-year basis, because remember at the beginning of 2024, we had the second wave of inflation. Now we're comparing to higher comps, so it should be easier to come in lower. And today's report was for December. We didn't even get the good news yet of January, February, March. Anyway, now core PCE is estimated to be 2.8% on the 12-month, 2.3% on the 6, and 2.2 on the 3-month. These are great numbers. This is a very, very good position to be in. And, you know, this is, you know, like, and this makes sense to me. Like, it's kind of like, why would you not want to be in stocks then, right? And then there's this person on X that I quoted. He says, the corrections in the stock, bond, and currency and metals markets have likely ended and are all poised for big reversals here. We likely see the fading of the wrong-headed narrative that drove the correction. Stronger economy, picking uptick inflation, and end of the Fed ease and tariff concerns. Basically, to unwind that, let me try to explain what he's trying to say. What he's trying to say is the economy is doing fine right now. Inflation is not upticking. Tariffs will probably not be as bad as people fear, and eventually the Fed will go back to cutting. All of that is good. That's like your sort of Goldilocks position that you want to be in. So all of that is fantastic, but then it sort of makes you wonder, okay, so is that going to lead to like the next peak euphoria? And that depends on how many bears there actually are, right? So like how many bears are sitting on cash, they're like, all right, now let's buy stocks that inflation is going away. Now, I've thought for years, starting in 2022, when I came up with the sort of Nike swoosh, although, you know, I wasn't expecting the euphoric end that we had here recently, which has been phenomenal for people's portfolio. But the reason for having come up with that thesis was because I thought it would take very long for people to get used to the idea that inflation is actually going away, and it's not that big of a problem. Well, it turns out like that's kind of what's slowly been happening, is people are still complaining about inflation, but then they're slowly getting used to, okay, maybe inflation's not that bad. And in this morning's Alpha report, which you can get for free at the bottom of mekevin.com, I said, hey, like companies like Tesla probably will do very well today. And if you noticed, Tesla stock opened at 2% and it closed at like 8% up. So it did do very well. Remember, you can get those Alpha reports for free every single morning. Okay, so look, nobody knows, but let's just put it this way. This removes more bad catalysts. This is fantastic. Like it's very hard to be negative right now, because the jobs report and these CPI reports together, these are like the death knells. If they come in bad, they're coming in great for December. So I hope it stays that way. It's Santa Claus coming late, and this is good for the economy. It's good for expanding businesses. So with that said, short seller Hindenburg is shutting down shop. It sounds like he's coming off some kind of stress. He talks about sort of like the intensity of his work having leading him to miss out on sort of the rest of the world and life, and that's why he's kind of shutting down. Honestly, he probably gets so much hate over at Hindenburg. Maybe that's why he's shutting down. Donald Trump is potentially also considering suspending the TikTok ban via an executive order for 60 to 90 days, just to allow time for maybe somebody to buy it, is my guess. You know, maybe Elon's like, oh yeah, look, I'll buy it, worst case scenario. You know, if you force me to buy it, I'll buy it. But, you know, I'm going to need more than 3 days. It wouldn't surprise me at all. Anyway, market rally is now, if you go back to 2022, it's now 26 months old out of an average 31-month era of market gains over the last century. And this is where we then get into quantum computing, which all of a sudden exploded again, and people are like, why is quantum computing exploding again? Okay, well, the president and CEO of Microsoft put out a document that basically suggests that you should start getting your business quantum ready. Now, I personally find it a little bit disingenuous, and I don't know, maybe you can tell me what you think about this, but when I was looking at this, I'm like, I don't know, man. This seems like, and I hate to say it, but it seems or feels like a sales pitch, and I don't know how I feel about it, okay? Let me show this to you, okay? Look at this. Quantum ready. Future-proof your organization today for quantum power tomorrow. And basically it says, join Microsoft's Quantum Ready program to build a robust strategy for quantum computing. Here, let's zoom in a little bit. Okay, so it's basically like a squeeze page where they want your information. And then if you join the Quantum Ready program, none of this is you're going to get a quantum computer. It actually says you're going to join a new skilling program that includes strategies and frameworks and resources to prepare you for a quantum future. You'll get resources, events, expertise, and insights from Microsoft. Now, it's also very interesting. If you look at their letter, they're like, as our industry looks towards the next 12 months, the pace of quantum research and development is only going to accelerate. Yes, the pace of research is going to accelerate. Big freaking deal. That doesn't mean you're actually gonna have a functional product. Anyway, but business, only 12% of businesses say they're ready for quantum. And this is why Microsoft is excited to announce our new Quantum Ready program. Becoming quantum ready is both a business and global imperative. Okay, cool. That's great, but none of this actually says use quantum computers. In fact, I think you kind of expose what's really going on when you go here. Take your first steps today. Assess quantum's impact on your organization. Understand how resilient quantum computing integrated with AI and classical supercomputing will unlock new growth for your organization. Aha! Aha! I personally think that is where the expose, if you will, is. Okay, well, that sounds dramatic. I don't mean to be melodramatic here. But what I mean to say is, I think, basically what you've got going on here is a business that's saying, hey, Kevin, can you switch back to the other camera? I'm trying to figure that out, honestly. I don't know that I can figure that out right now. I figured it out. I'm telling you, okay, there are big problems right now. I'm trying to fix them. And like all the devices that I used to be able to use just don't work anymore on this whole 4K live streaming idea. It's a disaster. But anyway, to me, this is basically Microsoft going, we don't really have quantum computers, but we want to start a relationship with all the people who might want to use quantum computers in the future, and we'll just give you our current AI stuff because that'll help you prepare for quantum. This sounds like a scam. I'm sorry. I don't know, maybe let me know if I'm losing my mind. Just like leave a comment and say something like, Kevin, I think you're right on about the quantum letter or something like that. Or tell me I'm wrong. It's fine. But I look at this announcement from Microsoft and I'm not trying to be a bear on quantum stocks. I'm not shorting any quantum stock. I'm not buying any quantum. I don't really care. I've already done, I think it was in Meet Kevin Report 7. If you haven't seen it yet, watch the quantum segment. Just type into YouTube, Meet Kevin Quantum Computers. And it's got like a 20-minute section breaking down the different quantum technologies. And so I was excited to hear this Microsoft update today, but then when I actually, especially since NVIDIA and Meta bagged on it, but now when I sit down and look at it, I'm like, man, this is a scam. Oh, well, the bank earnings were really good this morning. They're honestly very, very boring to talk about because they're just good, okay? Investment banking is up, borrowing is up, deposits are up, the markets are up, management fees are up. Like the banks are happy, they're fat and happy right now. And the reality is, as bond yields come down off of a peak, if the banks don't collapse at 4.8% 10-year treasuries, then it's really only uphill via lower yields for the banks on their balance sheets and balance sheet risk, as yields come down. Israel and Hamas have signed a ceasefire deal. 33 of the remaining 94 hostages will be released Sunday, dead or alive. Disaster. The rest over the next 6 weeks as sort of next phases of the deals progress. All of this happens right as Donald Trump warned that all hell would break loose. or that, Hamas would have all hell to pay if this deal wasn't done before he got in. And now he's about to get in, and oh wow, the deal is getting done. It's kind of interesting. What else is kind of interesting is where Karen Bass, the mayor of LA, was when the fire broke out. So we know she was in Ghana. Well, apparently she left on January 4th as the National Weather Service was citing warnings of the windstorm coming to LA. And what's worse, though, is that when the fire broke out, her staff argued that she wasn't at the party. She was working, making calls. But the LA Times disagrees and posts pictures of her basically, taking selfies and partying with people while the fire was breaking out. So that doesn't look very good. On top of that, LA Fire had on standby 1,000 firefighters and an additional 40 fire trucks, water carrying fire trucks. Some of them have tanks, some of them don't. If you've never done a ride along with the fire department, you should do it. I did. Got to see carbon monoxide, a real fire. I know, real fire on a firefighter. A hit and run, vehicle versus pedestrian. That was really bad. It's an eye-opening experience to see what first responders go through. So, and I've done like hundreds, thousands of ride-alongs with law enforcement, but fire department, that's an interesting one. So anyway, you learn a little bit about this equipment, and usually the big reason they're understaffing is because payroll is expensive. For any business, payroll is expensive, but when you literally have the National Weather Service freaking out, like, I don't think I've seen a freak out like this before. Here, I'll show it to you. When you have the National Weather Service posting this is the actual National Weather Service of Los Angeles, and they're saying, heads up, a life-threatening, destructive, what do we have here? Widespread windstorm is expected Tuesday afternoon to Wednesday morning across much of the Ventura/LA County area. Areas not typically windy will be impacted. See a graphic for areas of greatest concern. Stay indoors, away from windows, and expect power outages. So to me, this seems pretty aggressive, pretty obvious that there might be some problems coming. And despite this warning, what is the, what are the heads over at Los Angeles Fire and political offices do? Yeah, we're not going to deploy our extra recall provision. We're not going to institute a recall, they call it. It's not to be confused with like a recall of Karen Bass or a recall of Gavin Newsom. A recall is when they deploy basically reserve firefighters on standby. They had 40 engines available and 1,000 firefighters available on standby. They chose not to because of money. So LA Fire Department says, well, we had massive budget cuts, so we just didn't have the money to do it, and that's why we were busy and tied up somewhere else. And so the firefighters just weren't deployed. Some people say it's because the mayor should have forced it, but she wasn't local, so how could she have known? She couldn't lead because she was in Ghana. Others say, well, you couldn't have stopped anything because the fires were gusting, 60 to 90 miles an hour, so that was too high. In fairness, yesterday or the day before even, we had 40 to 50 mile an hour wind gusts, and the auto fire propped up in Ventura, California, and Oxnard, California. And that fire was rapidly contained because we have firefighters everywhere right now. The National Guard is out, all the cops are out, all the firefighters are out. Yeah, because all hell's basically broken loose. But that actually means we can respond quickly, which is exactly the opposite of what happened on the Palisades fire. We already talked about how the Palisades fire likely started because of reignition in the windy environment and the kindling of fire that wasn't completely put out and nobody was watching it. Not only was nobody watching it, but when somebody called in that this fire had ignited on the hills above Palisades, it took over 25 minutes on the morning of the Palisades fire, and not a single fire truck was on site after 25 minutes of the phone call coming in. Now, they ended up showing up in the minutes thereafter, but that's horrible. Could you imagine? Hey, California. First of all, here's 55% of my money in taxes. And there's a fire. Would you mind coming? Yeah. We're a little busy right now. Okay, obviously I'm being facetious here. I don't actually think that hardworking firefighters are just standing around. I just think they're either on the schedule and busy or not on the schedule. And in this case, they just weren't put on the schedule because the city wanted to save money. It was the beginning of the year. You don't want to, ruin the budget on day one, so to speak, right? Or month one. Well, what's interesting is I wanted to understand if we actually had a rapid response to that Palisades fire, how much less damaging the fire could have been. And so I don't know how to do exponential math, but I know somebody who's really good at math, and it's called ChatGPT. Now that sounds lame. Like, I don't know why, but it's kind of like we've kind of all gotten into this mindset. They're just GPTing it. Like, I don't like to write things with GPT. I don't like it when people use GPT to write their resumes or their emails. Like, when you read an email that's written by GPT, it takes me like half a second to go, GPT wrote that. And it just comes across as lame, right? So I hate citing it. And sometimes as a result, I hate using it. But I wasn't about to do this exponential math myself. So what I did is, and you should ask it yourself, okay? I said, assume there's a fire that in 3 days spread to 20,000 acres. Most of the spread occurred on day one because of 60 to 90 mile an hour gusts of winds. And the most gusts you had on other days were 30 to 40, maybe 50 mile an hour winds. Okay. And then, of course, there were flare-ups that were even higher. At some points, some people reported up to 200 mile an hour winds. I don't know if that's true, but let's say maybe it was, whatever. Okay, scenario number one. Assume no firefighters started attacking the Palisades Hill fire. I'm calling it the Hill fire because it's on a hill. For 35 minutes, the approximate actual time of firefighting, right? No fire truck is there after 25 minutes. It would take at least another 10 minutes to get out of your truck and a hose going. All right. Scenario, assuming, a truck showed up like within the next few minutes thereafter. Scenario number two, assume the fire was attacked within 10 minutes of the call. Someone calls 911, it gets routed, somebody's sitting in the Palisades with a fire truck, oh crap! And they drive over and then it also takes them the 10 minutes to get the hose out or whatever, right? And the phone call to get routed through. Keep in mind, there was not a single fire truck deployed in the Palisades. Not a single one. The 40 spare water trucks and the 1,000 firefighters that were available were parked somewhere and the firefighters were at home. Those extra 1,000 for the recall. Not a single one in the Palisades. It's almost like it was planned. Okay, no, I don't want to go down the conspiracy rabbit hole, but anyway. Assume the fire was attacked within 10 minutes, 25 minutes earlier. Now calculate the burn difference. So, scenario number one, after 3 days, 20,000 acres burned. Scenario number two, 7,400 acres. Early firefighting would result in approximately 12,500 fewer burned acres. This highlights the significant impact of early intervention in controlling fire spread. It's worth noting that in the operation manuals for LAFD, they say, when there's a fire, we will attack it hard and fast and early. Because the earlier you hit it, the less it grows. No freaking duh. I mean, imagine it's a circle. It's like the universe. Right? If you cut half of it out while it's still a little baby, it takes a lot longer to grow. But once it's huge and it's just growing and growing and growing, it's really hard to gain control over. Top commanders decided not to assign emergency deployment, roughly 1,000 available firefighters and dozens of water carrying engines. I mean, here, I'll just show you some of these screenshots. It's just ludicrous. Here you go. I'll zoom in a little bit more. Okay, fire officials chose not to order the firefighters to remain on duty for a second shift last Tuesday as the winds were building, which would have doubled the personnel on hand and staffed just 5 of the 40 engines that were available. None of those in the Palisades, by the way. No extra engines had been placed in the Palisades when the fire broke out. Efforts were hampered. Some say efforts were hampered because of the budget of the LAFD. Others say it was low water pressure because of the fire hydrants. Maybe because Santa Ynez's reservoir had no freaking water in the damn thing. Anyway, they said they were busy on other calls, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Look, this is just devastating and sad. And again, it shows the mismanagement of all these people. Should be fired. Heads should roll. It's disgusting. Anyway, all right. So what else do we have? The next thing that we have is what's going on with rent gouging. Everybody's complaining about rents going up a lot in Los Angeles. And some people are like, oh my gosh, landlords who are posting higher rent should be sued. Part of that may be because landlords are asking higher prices, but most of it, in my opinion, is actually because people are just bidding warring each other. So like if you put up a rental for a house in Los Angeles right now, close to, I don't know, Brentwood or Palisades area, close to that area, Santa Monica, for $8,000, you'd probably get somebody going, I'll pay you $16,000. Now, somebody is freely offering that to you, and they're like, and then somebody else is like, I'll pay 19, I'll pay 20. Is that price gouging? Or is that just a competitive marketplace competing for a limited number of resources, and the free market is basically determining the value of these properties? And some people say that, well, landlords are raising their prices. Well, yeah, sometimes landlords raise the prices so they stop getting calls of people thinking they're going to get it for $8 because they're going to go with somebody, giving them $18,000. And then they don't have to talk to all the people on the phone going, hey man, like, sorry, I've already got offers for this higher number. Some people are like, no, it's the greedy landlords. They raise the price. Other people are like, no, it's all the other people who have no homes and they're desperately trying to get a home. But because California underbuilt, there aren't enough. And so people are stepping on each other to try to get rentals right now. It's a mess. It's a mess. That's all I know. SoCal Edison is apparently trying to get implicated, or people are trying to implicate them for potentially a transmission line causing the Eaton fire. Altadena is basically gone. 3 utilities had opted into the wildfire fund, which would help protect these utilities and pay for negligent claims. Should there be claims against them. SoCal Edison is part of it, along with PG&E, which went bankrupt for the last fire, the Camp Fire that we had up north, and then the San Diego Gas and Electric Company, they're part of it as well. Think of it kind of like an insurance company for utilities. But what's interesting is Edison might not actually be at fault of the Eaton fire either. So we'll see, mostly because there are a lot of people pointing out to that also being another human-caused fire. The Palisades fire, it looks like, was caused by a New Year's Eve celebration that was still smoldering 4 days later. Anyway, there are some rumors circulating that Starlink is being banned by Newsom for firefighter use. I'm unable to find anything credible on this, but because people hate Newsom so much, this sort of stuff spreads like wildfire. I shouldn't make those references this early. Anyway, regarding fires, there's also plenty of hit pieces out against electric vehicles right now about using electric vehicles and the risk of them when there are emergencies. I just like to say that when I heard about the fires in LA, within like 30 minutes of the fire breaking out, the first thing I did was went to go plug in our cars, like the Cybertruck, or Lauren now uses the S, or, my dad's Black X, my Black X that my dad drives now. He rides her all the time. Anyway, it's a good idea to charge these things before your power goes out because the worst thing is, like, it's already hard enough to get supercharging as is. Like, on a normal day, you go out and try to get supercharging, and usually the only stall that's available has a broken supercharger. And everybody pulls into the same spot because there's no obvious indicator that it's broken. Should be like a red light that is out of service or something like that. Which kind of sucks because, like, that means everybody who's evacuating kind of has to consolidate around these EV charger areas, and it kind of slows the evacuation and clogs everyone up. This is all really before you start getting a bunch of third-party vehicles using the Tesla supercharging network. So I'm not really sure about that. I personally just try to charge at home because it's a pain in the butt to rely on superchargers. I hate it. And I have unlimited supercharging on, I think 2 of the cars. I don't think the Cybertruck has it, but I think the S and the X do. And I don't care because it's such a pain in the butt. But anyway, there's also a piece in the Wall Street Journal about armed people sneaking back to their homes in the Palisades, sneaking around police lines. One of the people they interviewed for this was Ross Gerber. I'm not sure if he's just one of the people sneaking by or one of the armed people they're talking about. They didn't say who was the armed person. Okay. Then I'd like to just hit on stresses and daily wealth. Look, I've been pretty overwhelmed the last few days, and it's really screwed up my routine and everything, and so I apologize about this. And so I found that while chaos theory is great, if you conduct too much chaos in your life, you can actually set yourself back a little bit. See, I usually like enough chaos that I can control, and then I'm motivated to get a lot of stuff done really quickly. But if you create too much chaos, you can actually overwhelm yourself, and then you kind of shut down, and then that chaos really becomes a detriment. So the way to solve that, if you're ever in that situation, is you basically just have to go on your calendar and just start canceling stuff. Just like you're mentally sick. Like, I don't know, something's wrong. Actually, our little guy, Max, he's like vomiting. It's a disaster right now. I got to help him too. Like there's some family things you just can't get off your calendar. You do have to help your family when they have problems. But you got to get back on the right footing. And so one way that I sometimes do this is I'll do what I call the midnight burn, where you sleep really well one day, you get like 8 hours of sleep, and you kind of limit coffee during that day on purpose. And then at 9 p.m., you start drinking like multiple coffees and monsters. Your goal is really to stay up as long as possible until the next morning. And then you sleep like 2 or 4 hours. And then you try to go to sleep around 9 or 10. So like early enough so you could wake up early again the next morning. Because if you go to sleep at 9 and you sleep for 7 hours, you wake up at 4. Or maybe you go to sleep at 10, you wake up at 5. That's pretty good. That's how you can sort of like reset yourself to get back onto a wake up early routine. And sometimes it starts with what I like to call sort of like the daily wealth reset. Anyway, as far as the dad joke of the day, I'm starting to run low on dad jokes. So if you wouldn't mind, leave me some comments down below for some dad jokes. Okay? With that said, let's conduct today's dad joke. So I went to the grocery store and I asked the lady where the milk was. She said, "Buy the bread." I said, "No, I don't want bread. I want milk."
Why not advertise these things that you told us here? I feel like nobody else knows about this.
We'll try a little advertising and see how it goes.
Congratulations, man. You have done so much. People love you. People look up to you.
Kevin Paffrath there, financial analyst and YouTuber. Meet Kevin. Always great to get your take.